In today's video, I want to explore a feeling we have probably all felt at one point or another, and that is envy. And if you have felt it, chances are that sooner or later your character should too. It's just part of the human experience and has been established as one of the 7 deadly sins. The ancient Greek philosopher, I won't chance pronouncing his name, so I've just spelled it out here on the screen instead. But he described envy as corrosive as iron being eaten by rust. So that sounds interesting, and we better dig a bit deeper. So let's get into it. Hi guys, my name is Jesper and welcome to the Fane of Fantasy. This channel is all about giving you inspiration to master your craft and create fantasy that will truly immerse your audience. In the 2-part video series on life at a medieval castle, the question of the week asked, in your opinion, what is the most important or interesting part of the medieval castle? Please do let me know in the comment section over there on that video, but since there are no responses yet, I can share my own view instead. So I must admit that I find the parts about the dungeons most intriguing. I remember as a child when my parents took me and my younger brother to see some medieval castles. We have a lot of those here in Europe, and it was always the dungeon area that really allured me. So there you have it. Let's get into today's topic. So envy is a near universal experience, but in considering applying it to your character, we need to distinguish between envy and jealousy. The two are often used interchangeably, however there is a meaningful distinction. So while jealousy is the fear of losing something you already have, such as a spouse for example, envy is pain over something you don't have. So that could be a good marriage, more money, all that kind of things. So in applying it to a character, remember that envy is where the character may resent or feel uncomfortable with the success of someone else. So here we can distinguish between hostile and depressive envy, where hostile envy leads to the character wanting the other person to fail, and depressive envy leads to the character to feel sad and inferior when comparing him or herself to this other person. Now, this is an emotion that you can use to make the character act in ways that eventually undermines their own interests. Because that is what envy can do long term. It can lead to bad behavior, and if there is a better way to crank up the tension in your setting, I really don't know. Envy will often take its beginning with social comparison, where the character tries to determine own personal worth by comparing him or herself to others. So research has actually shown that the process of comparison happens continually and automatically. So underneath our awareness, and it sets us up for an inevitable deflation of confidence and self-esteem. So what you can consider for your character is that shame might be the fuel of envy. It's when the character looks at somebody else and feels envy, not because that someone has acquired or achieved something, not necessarily, but it could also be because the character believes him or herself unable to acquire or achieve the same. You see, envy, jealousy, and shame are truly intertwined, and you can use them as a triangle of destruction. It's probable that your character first felt it as a sibling rivalry, and in the later stages of life you can make it take many forms. It can be discontent with someone's possessions or someone's traits such as beauty, success or talent. It's really up to you to be creative here and find ways in which you can put it all into play. Know that it stems from a very basic desire, that of your character wanting something that he or she believes someone else has. There is that desire under the surface that you can also use to show the character's own inadequacies and view of self. Also consider that envy is often a secretly held emotion. It's not likely that the character will admit to it unless it's to someone who might also be envious of that particular other person. So here you can make it even more interesting. So now you have two envy characters working together against a third. I'm certain there are some really interesting stories buried right here. So why don't we make that the question of the week? So here goes. Share one interesting way in which envy can be incorporated into the story. So just leave your response in the comment section below. It's really that easy. For envy to take root in your character, 3 conditions must be met. First, you must confront the character with a person who has a superior quality, achievement or possession. And secondly, then the character must desire those qualities for him or herself, or at least wish that the other person lacked it. And third, the character has to feel pain by the associated emotion. So the beginning of the pain of envy is that emptiness from inside the character. You know, a feeling that doesn't always belong to the character. It might actually originate from the parents that the character envied or admired as a child. It could be that the character's parents struggled for money, for example, and therefore the character now envies those who have money. The fundamental problem with envy is that it blinds the character from the bigger picture. It can destroy the character's own life if it's allowed to grow and expand. It'll just take over. So when the character is in the grips of envy, he or she will be the captain of a ship lost at sea, so to speak. Envy is really a question of attitude. So when the character comes across someone with more success, they could also react with joy or indifference, but when envy takes hold, its pain is speaking. Over on Patreon, there is nothing to be envious about, though, or I hope there isn't. You can get into the reward program for just $1 like everyone else, and more importantly, you can help keeping these videos ad-free. There is a link to Patreon in the description field right below this video, so please go and check that one out. So with envy, we are dealing with a deeply ingrained part of the human psyche. So our tribal ancestors lived in fear of arousing the envy of the gods. And in Greek mythology, which I absolutely love, it's Hera's envy for Aphrodite that sets off the Trojan War. Given that our emotions have evolved to help us, what could be the purpose of envy? Well, as an emotion, it is survival of the species, because envy is related to competition and social comparison. So if you consider the thoughts and feelings that envy creates in your character, it's things like wanting what someone else has. You know, envy triggers the character's brain to make them experience animosity toward the person and anguish within within him or herself. So in a fantasy setting, this is just what makes a character decide to do something to eliminate someone else or find a way to possess the desired quality. Just to throw a curveball for inspiration here, how about this one? What if the character mistakes attraction to another person for what is actually his or her envy of them? That could spice things up now, couldn't it? A few more chapters and book 3 of the Keystone Bone trilogy will be ready for editing. That requires quite some work, the editing part, but if all goes well, do I dare say it, it should be out sometime early next year. No promises at this stage, just me talking here. I'm trying to put as much work as I can into the second edition of my book on fantasy map making too. I would really like that one to go out as soon as possible, but because I have decided to incorporate pictures to go along with the step-by-step descriptions, it does take longer to complete the work. So that said, I think that it will increase the reading experience considerably, so it's all worth it. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please hit the like button below and share the video with a friend too. If this is your first time here, do make sure to subscribe, and all there's left to say is stay safe out there and see you next Monday.